John Ratcliffe. He was the former National Intelligence Director under Donald Trump. Now, it has come out, supposedly, the Pentagon has now told us that there were 3 such incursions. Chinese, let's assume it was a spy balloon. It would be very weird if it was just there's just these multiple weather balloons that get loose and they happen to come this way, but maybe. But it's a spy balloon getting, slightly better pictures than the satellites, perhaps. Maybe it's for their version of Airbnb. Who knows? But here is Ratcliffe. And this is a really strange way of denying that this happened. He doesn't remember. If it's either a huge deal that would have you be brought onto Fox News, or it's something that, it's one of those things you forget about.
Why are you on here for? Like, what's the purpose? But
John, the Biden administration is trying to minimize this explosive situation in this past week. And the Department of Defense is claiming that there were 3 balloons, Chinese spy balloons, that entered the United States airspace during the Trump administration, and that they were not shot down and they were not disclosed. Can you please tell us the truth and if that's true?
Well, it's not true. I can refute it. Former Secretary of Defense Mark Esper refuted it yesterday. Former Secretary of State and CIA Director Mike Pompeo has refuted it. But Maria, the American people can refute it for themselves. Do you remember during the Trump administration when photographers on the ground and commercial airline pilots were talking about a spy balloon over the United States that people could look up and see even with the naked eye, and that a media that hated Donald Trump wasn't reporting? I don't remember that either, because it didn't happen. As I said to you earlier, this was unprecedented. We have never had a circumstance where an adversary has had spy craft over our country, our continental United States.
Please, if you could. That is total crap. The reason that he's lying about this, I'm sure he is because those balloons just haven't been spotted before. The reason that this became a story was because people were able to see it, people were able to film it, then it became and ballooned into this whole another thing, no pun intended. But the reality of the situation is that this kind of intel gathering happens all the time. So that's why it wasn't taken seriously then. It's because it's ubiquitous. The United States is surveilling China. China's surveilling us. This just happened to be able to be seen by civilians. And then I do think the Biden administration saw it as an opportunity to look tough ahead of Biden's meeting, or I should say Blinken's meeting in China. And posture, right?
Of course. I think that's a big part of this. Continue.
Posing a threat for the better part of a week straight. And that's why I said to you before, not only is it unprecedented, but the damage from this is incalculable, both from an intelligence standpoint and the possible payloads. You talked a little bit earlier about the different types of payloads that a stratospheric balloon could carry. Those possibilities are limited only by your imagination. But what we do know is none of those are possible to be deployed against the United States if a stratospheric balloon isn't allowed to traipse across our countryside for 4 straight days, something that has never happened before.
It's traipsing across our country.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty nasty, that balloon.
Yeah.
It is really just a completely manufactured event, as far as I can tell.
Smugness of that balloon.
That balloon has got some real cojones, as it were. In fact, I think you can see them dropping after we shoot it, and they'll be picking those up from the ocean. The bottom line is that this is just a bizarre part of the push to that we've seen building really for years. An assault, an attempt to sort of like bring tensions with China to a head. And understand this also, whether it was Donald Trump ramped this up, but this has been going on for a long time. I've told that story many times about Lynn Cheney, or was it Liz Cheney? Who is the mom? Lynn Cheney, sitting on a board of the 21st Century Threats to America with Rudman and Gary Hart in the year 2000. And she was adamant that China was America's biggest threat at that time. And this has been ongoing. They attempted to make a big Chinese push in, I think it's 2010, maybe it was, where China was going to, because it owned really, actually, simply, I don't know, 15% of our debt, maybe. I'm not sure what it's at now, but that they were going to sink this country. This is the storyline that is pushed. And of course, what's happening now is the Biden administration, in a bid to strengthen our supply lines, is also threatening to sort of attempt to decouple some of the economic destiny that is shared between China and the U.S. As it's been, if China gets a cold, we sneeze, and vice versa. And the attempt to bring back things like semiconductors, it's one thing to bring them back here. It's another to say you can't go to China.
Yeah.
And that is going to exacerbate the tensions, because decoupling our fate from Chinese fate is going to is obviously going to increase suspicions between the two countries. And so, and this is a problem, because aside from whether we get involved militarily with China, which I hope that we do not do, obviously.
Yes.
And, but we also need more than that. We need cooperation with China to deal with what is a massive threat of climate change. And so it is,
it's just this continuation of Cold War politics, and our Cold War with Russia is still not necessarily technically over, especially in terms of the position that our antagonism with them holds in our politics. It's just, I feel like in terms of an economic threat, that's why the aggression to China is ramping up, because they're perceived as more of an economic threat, and they are. But as you say, Sam, the ramifications of it are dire. And we had that deal that we did with Australia, right, for the submarines a year and a half ago, 2 years ago under Biden. Now this reopening of those 4 Filipino military bases, so we're in their backyard. It's clear that the U.S. is militarily puffing its chest out to China. So if they send a balloon over and maybe fly it a little low so it's seen, make a stink about it, that's just what should be expected when tensions are heightened like this.
Militant apathy asks, I appreciate the cynicism about Biden. What do you think they should have done about this? Well, I think what they did was appropriate.
I don't know if you canceled diplomatic talks over that.
Well, they postponed it, and different than canceling. I don't know if you would postpone it either. You can downplay it. You can say, we're not sure if it's a weather balloon or if it's a spy satellite. If it is a spy satellite, it's not going to get too much more information than you would get from a satellite. In which they have, certainly satellite capacity, and you could downplay it. And, but of course, the problem is also the media. The problem is the war hawkery that exists in Washington. And I think to a certain extent, the other things that could have been done would, Biden could be downplaying and being more cautious about our Chinese relationship in other areas, so that this isn't, but we'll see. I mean, this is just one of those things that's going to blow over, hopefully within a couple of days. But, when you look at the TPP was also part of this Asian pivot. And again, this is so explicitly tied into who's going to be the dominant economic power around the world that it gets more and more explicit, I guess, as time wears on in terms of these things.